When 72-year-old Pearl Carl called 911 to check on her daughter and grandson, she expected a routine welfare check. What officers found inside the house left them frozen in place. One child's body, dozens of chilling drawings, and a mother too far gone to understand what she'd done. This is the story the news didn't tell you, and it starts with a single whisper from behind a locked door.
Welcome to The Silent Witness, where we highlight true crime news, unsolved mysteries, unfold chilling stories and events around us to educate and provide information on how we can stay proactive, informed, be security and safety conscious in our environment. The Silent Witness is your go-to destination for gripping accounts of real-life crimes, missing persons, cold cases, and unexplained events. Want to support us and appreciate our craft? Click like, comment, and hit the subscribe button now.
Pearl Carl gripped the steering wheel tighter as her old Honda rolled down the gravel path. The closer she got to Danielle's house, the heavier her chest felt. It had been over a week since she'd last heard from her daughter, and something didn't feel right. Danielle wasn't the best at returning calls. She'd struggled over the years with depression, with the pressures of being a single mother, but she'd never gone completely silent. Not like this. Pearl pulled into the driveway and parked. The mailbox was stuffed with unopened letters. A thin film of dust coated the windshield of Danielle's sedan. Pearl's gut twisted. God, please let them be okay, she whispered, reaching into her purse for the spare key Danielle had given her last year. The door creaked open. The smell hit her like a punch. It wasn't just the smell of stale food or dirty laundry. It was something deeper, something rotting. She stepped inside slowly. Flies buzzed near the garbage-strewn kitchen. The living room looked like it hadn't been cleaned in weeks. Pearl covered her nose with her hand and called out, "Danielle? Jayden? It's Mom. Hello?" No answer. Then she saw the couch. Jayden lay there, curled under his favorite Spider-Man blanket. At first, Pearl felt a brief wave of relief. Maybe he was just napping. But as she stepped closer, the hairs on her arms stood up. "Jayden?" she whispered, reaching out to touch his hand. It was cold, ice cold. "No, no, no, no," she screamed, stumbling back. Her shaking hands fumbled with her phone. She dialed 911 with a trembling finger. 911, what's your emergency? Please, I think my grandson is dead. He's cold. He's stiff. I just got here. Please, send someone. The dispatcher's voice tried to cut through her panic. "Ma'am, I need you to stay calm. Is the child breathing? No, he's cold. My God, he's cold." Minutes later, sirens wailed down the street. Officer Johnson was the first through the door. His body cam captured the moment he stepped inside and recoiled at the stench. Pearl sat slumped on a chair, sobbing, repeating the same thing over and over. I didn't know. Jayden was 11, a quiet, gentle soul who loved dinosaurs and building Lego castles. He should have been getting ready for 6th grade. Instead, he lay still, abandoned in the home meant to keep him safe. The officers moved quickly. Johnson checked for a pulse. Nothing. Rigor mortis had already set in. "This kid's been gone a while," he muttered grimly into his radio. Pearl tried to explain. She didn't know where Danielle was. Her car was still outside, her purse still on the table. But Danielle herself? Nowhere to be found. The search began immediately. Officers cleared the rooms one by one, weapons drawn. But it was as if Danielle had vanished into thin air. In the kitchen, dishes were stacked with mold. Rotten food spilled from counters. On the fridge, Jayden's colorful drawings were still pinned with magnets. One showed a smiling stick figure family. Me, mommy, grandma. The contrast was unbearable. Pearl sat on the curb as the police taped off the house. Her hands trembled. Her voice cracked. "She's sick. She's been off. I tried to help, but she wouldn't let me in." A young detective crouched beside her. "Mrs. Carl, we need to take your statement. Please come with us." Pearl nodded slowly. "Just find her. Please find my daughter." Neighbors peeked out from behind curtains. Some gathered at the end of the driveway, whispering. "I never saw the boy much. one neighbor later told the news. Thought she homeschooled him. Didn't think much of it. I heard yelling sometimes, another said. Didn't want to pry, but maybe they should have. The tragedy that unfolded behind those walls wasn't sudden. It was slow, creeping, built over months of isolation, mental decay, and silence. Jayden had been dead for days, maybe more, alone, wrapped in a blanket, in the same room where cartoons once played and homework once lay. And Danielle Carl was gone. Pearl had no choice but to ride in the back of the patrol car, escorted to the station for a formal statement. Her fingers shook as she clutched her handbag. As the car pulled away from the house, she turned and looked back through the rear window. The yellow crime scene tape fluttered in the wind. Her life was no longer the same. At the precinct, she sat across from a detective named Elena Mora. The room was cold, sterile, and brightly lit. Pearl felt exposed under the harsh light, like she was being dissected. "Start from the beginning," Elena said gently. "When was the last time you spoke to Danielle?" Pearl closed her eyes, trying to remember the last conversation. It was maybe 9 days ago. She was quiet, tense. I asked her if she needed help, but she just said, "I'm fine, Mom. Don't come over." I didn't want to push. Did she say anything else? Anything unusual? She mentioned voices, said she couldn't sleep, that something was watching her. Pearl looked down. I thought maybe it was just the stress again. She'd had episodes before, but she always bounced back. Detective Mora jotted notes as Pearl spoke. Did she have a history of mental illness? She was never officially diagnosed, Pearl replied. But after Jayden was born, she got worse. She'd cry for hours. Some days she wouldn't leave the bed. But she refused therapy. Said they'd try to take her son away. Elena glanced at the case file. We're working on tracking her phone. It pinged near the house 3 days ago but hasn't moved since. Pearl flinched. So she was there. While he was. We can't confirm that yet, Elena said cautiously. But it's one of our working theories. Later that evening, the coroner's office confirmed what everyone feared. Jayden had likely been deceased for at least 5 days. Malnourished. Dehydrated. No signs of physical trauma, just slow, quiet neglect. Danielle's purse was found open on the kitchen table. Her wallet, keys, and cell phone still inside, as if she'd planned to return. The case was now a full-blown missing person investigation.
Want to support us and appreciate our craft? Click like, comment, and hit the subscribe button now.
The sun was just beginning to rise over the sleepy suburb of Brook Hollow when Detective Elena Mora pulled into the station parking lot, coffee in hand and files tucked beneath her arm. Pearl Carl's tearful statement from the night before still echoed in her mind. Inside, a sense of urgency filled the air. Officers huddled around white bards, pins and red strings connecting a growing mess of theories and possibilities. Danielle Carl hadn't just disappeared. She had left behind a dead child, a stinking house, and more questions than answers. Detective Mora entered the conference room where her partner, Detective Troy Hughes, was already reviewing the coroner's preliminary findings. "Anything new?" she asked, setting down her files. Hughes shook his head. "Time of death puts Jayden gone at least 5 days, maybe 6. No signs of physical trauma. They're calling it severe neglect due to psychological impairment." "So she snapped?" Mora asked, eyebrows lifting. "Maybe. Or maybe she just gave up. Either way, she vanished without her car, phone, or wallet. She left everything behind. And no one's seen her? Not a trace. Neighbors say she kept to herself. Pearl said Danielle stopped answering texts over a week ago. We're pulling security cam footage from nearby intersections, checking bus terminals. If she left on foot, maybe someone saw something." Mora sighed. "A mother doesn't just walk away from her dead child without reason." "She might not have been thinking clearly," Hughes offered. "Mental illness can bury reason in a deep hole." They both knew this wouldn't be a clean case. Meanwhile, Pearl sat on the edge of her bed in the guest room of a friend's house. Her eyes were bloodshot. Her hands trembled with grief and guilt. She clutched a framed photo of Jayden from his last birthday. He had a gap-toothed smile, frosting on his chin. The knock at the door startled her. "Mrs. Carl." It was Mora. Pearl let her in and motioned to the chair. "Did you find her?" Mora shook her head. "Not yet, but we're working hard. I need to ask you a few more questions." Pearl nodded slowly. "Did Danielle have any close friends? Anyone she might have run to in a panic?" "No." She cut everyone off. Her old friend Karen stopped visiting 2 years ago. Said Danielle was too much. Danielle got paranoid. Kept saying people were judging her. Mora scribbled notes. "She talked about spirits sometimes," Pearl continued. "Said she could hear voices warning her about the government. About people watching her through the TV. Delusions." Pearl hesitated. She believed them. She wasn't violent, not toward Jayden. But she became erratic, afraid of everything. Did she ever mention harming herself or Jayden? No, never. She loved that boy. She just couldn't cope with the world. Mora studied Pearl's face, seeing both heartbreak and quiet fury. "She asked for help once," Pearl whispered. "But by the time I got to her door, she didn't let me in. She shouted through the window, 'It's too late. I'm already marked.'" Marked. The word chilled Mora. Back at the station, detectives pieced together Danielle's last known movements. Surveillance from a gas station 3 blocks from her home showed her buying a bottle of water, disheveled, wide-eyed, muttering to herself. That was 6 days ago. The clerk remembered her. She looked like hell, talked to herself the whole time. I asked if she was okay, and she said, "He's still breathing. For now." I thought she meant someone at home. I didn't know she had a kid. That changed everything. If Jayden was still alive 6 days ago, and dead when Pearl found him, Danielle might have been present during his final hours. Now the case wasn't just about a missing mother. It was potentially a crime of omission, a case of neglect escalating to manslaughter. Mora and Hughes ordered a sweep of all local shelters, churches, hospitals, and wooded areas. Volunteers joined in. Flyers were printed. News reports aired Danielle's photo. Some viewers called in with tips, but none panned out. One lead stood out. A woman matching Danielle's description was seen wandering near a closed community center late at night, barefoot and wearing mismatched clothes. She was muttering, twitching, and trying to open the locked doors. "She looked scared," said a local who spotted her, "like something was chasing her." But there was no one there. By the time police arrived, she was gone. That night, Pearl sat alone on the couch, TV muted. The room was dark except for the glow of the screen. A news anchor repeated Jayden's name. His school photo lingered on the screen. Pearl clutched a pillow and began to sob. But then something on the screen caught her attention. A blurred background, behind the reporter covering the story from outside a shelter, looked eerily familiar. A woman, ducking her head, quickly turned away from the camera. Pearl's breath caught. She rewound the segment, froze the frame. It was Danielle. She was alive. Pearl grabbed her phone. "Detective Mora? I think I just saw her on the news." Detective Elena Mora stood at the threshold of the downtown homeless shelter, her badge displayed and eyes scanning the chaotic interior. Cots lined the walls, the air thick with the scent of sweat and damp clothing. Voices murmured, shoes shuffled. The shelter director, a weary-eyed woman named Lillian, greeted her with a clipboard in hand. "You sure she's one of ours?" Lillian asked. Pearl Carl, her mother, swears she saw Danielle here on a news segment shot outside your building. "Can I take a look at your guest intake logs?" Mora asked. Lillian hesitated. "We don't ID people unless there's trouble. But you can look." They flipped through days of names, some fake, others just scribbled initials. Mora's finger paused on one, DC signed in shaky handwriting 3 days prior. Lillian pointed toward the east wing. "She slept in that corner for one night, left before sunrise. Said she was going to stop the lights from listening. That's all she said. Didn't take food. Just vanished." Mora thanked her and made a note. Danielle was spiraling fast. That same morning, Pearl Carl arrived at the station with a worn leather journal in her hands.
Want to support us and appreciate our craft? Click like, comment, and hit the subscribe button now.
This was Danielle's. I found it hidden in the back of her closet, she said, handing it to Hughes. I couldn't read much. Some of it doesn't make sense. Maura opened the journal and scanned through pages of frantic handwriting. Some entries were lucid. Danielle describing her struggle to be a good mother, apologizing to Jayden for being too slow to get better. But others were jarring. Scribbled phrases like, "They come through the wires," and "Jayden's eyes glow now. I think he's one of them." She was losing touch, Hughes murmured. Paranoia, auditory hallucinations, delusional thinking. Maura looked up, and no one helped her. Pearl broke into tears. I thought if I loved her enough, it would go away. I didn't know how deep she'd sunk. 2 days later, another call came in. A woman matching Danielle's description was seen breaking into a storage unit behind a shuttered grocery store. She'd been there for hours, talking to herself. Officers responded quickly, but she'd fled again, leaving behind a bizarre scene. Inside the unit were dozens of children's drawings pinned to the wall. All of them bore Jayden's name. Crayon depictions of a stick figure boy surrounded by shadows, floating eyes, and crooked houses. Danielle's sleeping bag was there too, next to an open can of beans and half a bottle of water. She was camping out here, Maura said, frowning, and trying to hold on to him, to her memories. But look at this, Hughes added, pointing to a crude charcoal drawing. It showed Danielle, holding Jayden's hand, both standing on a cliff's edge. Was she planning something? Maura asked, chills prickling her arms. Maybe she already did, Hughes replied quietly. That evening, Danielle was finally spotted in the woods near Briarwood Park. A hiker had seen her, barefoot and covered in dirt, talking to the trees. She said something about returning the stars to the sky, he told police. I thought she was on drugs. Officers closed in, but Danielle was elusive. Every time they got close, she slipped away like smoke. Tracks showed she was heading deeper into the forest. Police dogs followed the scent. Search parties fanned out. Pearl begged to come along. She's my daughter. Let me try. She might come to me. Maura hesitated but relented. With 2 officers in tow, Pearl ventured into the trees. Night fell. Flashlights bobbed through the underbrush. Then a rustle. Danielle, Pearl called softly. Silence. Then a figure stepped from the shadows. Danielle Carl, filthy, gaunt, and trembling, stood beneath a canopy of gnarled trees. Her eyes locked on Pearl's. Mom, she whispered. Pearl stepped forward, arms outstretched. Baby, it's me. Danielle looked confused. Is he with you? Jayden. Pearl's voice broke. No, sweetheart. He's gone. Danielle blinked, slowly. He told me he was fine. He said he forgave me. He talks to me sometimes. In the wind. Tears rolled down Pearl's face. Let us help you, Danielle. Come with us. Danielle took a trembling step forward. Then another. Officers moved in. She didn't resist. She collapsed into Pearl's arms, sobbing. I didn't mean to leave him. I just wanted the noise to stop. Pearl held her daughter tight, her own sobs joining hers. Danielle Carl was admitted to the psychiatric ward of Brook Hollow General Hospital under emergency observation. Her wrists bore the signs of her time in the woods. Scratches, insect bites, bruises. She didn't fight the intake. She didn't cry. She simply whispered, I just need silence, before curling up in the hospital bed, eyes fixed on the white ceiling tiles. Pearl Carl sat nearby, her hands folded in her lap. She hadn't left the hospital since the arrest. She refused. This was her daughter, and even in the wreckage of tragedy, she wasn't about to let her face it alone. She's dissociating, Dr. Anya Levin explained, flipping through Danielle's initial evaluations. Severe psychosis, paranoid delusions, auditory hallucinations. We've stabilized her, but it's going to be a long road. Will she remember what happened to Jayden? Pearl asked, voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Levin paused. She might, but it's more likely that the trauma has fractured her memories. They may come back in pieces, if at all. And when they do, it could break her again. Meanwhile, the media erupted. Headlines screamed, "Mother found after son dies in horror home scene." News vans parked outside the hospital. Reporters camped near Pearl's house. Jayden's image, his school photo, plastered every broadcast. But no one talked about Danielle's illness. No one asked about the signs. They only wanted to know, why did she let him die? Detective Elena Mora was sick of it. She didn't kill him out of malice, Mora said during a closed-door meeting with the DA's office. She lost herself. She was crying for help, and no one listened. She's still responsible, said the assistant district attorney. We need to consider charges: manslaughter, criminal negligence, maybe even second-degree murder. She didn't abandon him, Mora argued. She was there until the end. She stayed with him while he died. That's not a killer. That's a broken mother. The room fell silent. Then Hughes added, "We let her fall through the cracks. The system did." The DA rubbed his forehead. "Public pressure is mounting. Let me review the psych reports. No decision until we know if she's competent." Back at the hospital, Danielle stirred awake. Pearl was there as always. "Hi, baby," Pearl said softly. Danielle blinked, confused. "Where's Jayden?" Pearl took a shaky breath. He's gone, sweetie." Danielle turned away. "No, he was just here. He was sitting by the window." Pearl tried to steady her voice. "That was a memory, honey. He's not here anymore." Danielle began to hum softly, a lullaby Pearl used to sing. Her fingers tapped an invisible beat against the blanket. Then, without looking, she asked, "Did they find the book?" Pearl frowned. "What book?" "The one I made for him. Full of secrets. Full of rules. So he'd be safe when they came." Pearl gently took her hand. "Sweetheart, there were drawings in the storage unit. Were those the rules?" Danielle didn't answer. She looked out the window and said, "He said the lights were too bright. That's why he stopped eating. That's why he stopped talking. He was scared of the noise." Tears slid down Pearl's cheeks. "I should have done more. I should have forced you to come stay with me." Danielle looked at her mother with a flash of lucidity. "I didn't want him to see me fall apart." The rawness of that moment hung in the air like smoke. Later that week, a psychiatric evaluation concluded that Danielle Carl was unfit to stand trial. She was transferred to a long-term care facility for intensive treatment. The official charges were dropped, but not the public scrutiny. Pearl issued a public statement, asking for privacy, compassion, and a broader conversation about mental health. It went viral, but even then, strangers left cruel messages online. Photos of Jayden became memes. The worst parts of the internet latched onto the story like vultures. Danielle's name would always be tied to tragedy. And yet, Pearl refused to let it end there. She started a nonprofit in Jayden's name, Jayden's Light, advocating for early mental health intervention in at-risk families. Donations poured in. Volunteers stepped forward. And Danielle, under sedation and therapy, began drawing again.
Want to support us and appreciate our craft? Click like, comment, and hit the subscribe button now.
The room was cold, filled with the quiet buzz of fluorescent lights. Danielle Carl sat cross-legged on the floor of the therapy room at the State Psychiatric Rehabilitation Center. Her hair was longer now, unkempt but cleaner than it had been in months. She held a piece of charcoal between her fingers, gently dragging it across the paper in front of her. Jayden's eyes. That's what she was trying to draw. But every time they came out wrong. Too hollow, too dark, too distant. Behind the one-way mirror, Pearl watched. "She's been participating in art therapy every day for the past 2 weeks," said Dr. Levin, who had transferred to the center to continue working with Danielle. "Her dissociation is less severe, but the trauma is deep. She's still unsure what's real. But the drawings are her bridge to reality." Pearl nodded slowly, hands clutched tightly around her purse. "Can I speak to her today?" Dr. Levin hesitated. "She's had a good day, but keep it light, familiar. Don't press." Pearl stepped into the therapy room. Danielle didn't look up. "It's quiet here, Pearl said gently. Better than the city. Danielle's charcoal paused. No sirens. Pearl sat across from her. No sirens. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Danielle said, Jayden was scared of sirens. Pearl's heart clenched. I know. I told him to hide when they came. I made him a list. Rules to follow when the monsters showed up. Pearl's voice trembled. The drawings? Were they warnings? Danielle shook her head. Maps. Maps to a safe place. I just couldn't find it in time. Tears welled in Pearl's eyes. You loved him. He knew that. Danielle blinked. I think he forgave me. A single tear rolled down her cheek. He whispered it the night before he stopped breathing. He said, It's not your fault, Mommy. Pearl reached across the table and took her hand. Then hold on to that. Let it carry you. Outside, storm clouds loomed in the distance, but the sun still broke through. A metaphor, maybe, for healing not pure or complete but possible. Weeks passed. Pearl gave weekly press interviews not to defend her daughter, but to humanize her. To demand better systems, better care, better laws. There were signs, she told reporters. Danielle asked for help. She tried. The system failed her. And now we've lost a child. My grandson is gone because of our silence. Across the country, the case sparked outrage and reform. Local governments began investing in preventive care programs for young mothers. School counselors were trained to detect signs of psychosis in parents. Jayden's law passed in the state Senate, mandating mental health checks for families flagged by CPS. Pearl's nonprofit grew exponentially. Danielle, though still institutionalized, began speaking more. She read letters Pearl brought. She smiled once when a therapy dog sat beside her. And in time, she asked for color pencils, her first request in nearly a year. Then, one spring morning, she gave Pearl another drawing. This time, it wasn't just her and Jayden. Pearl was in it too, the three of them sitting in a garden. Jayden was laughing. No monsters, no rules, just a sunny day. Pearl framed it. She hung it in the living room where Jayden's toys once scattered the floor. Healing isn't a straight line, but for the Carl family it had begun. And for every stranger who whispered judgment behind a screen, there were now 100 more who understood that sometimes the scariest monsters aren't the ones we imagine, but the ones we fail to see until it's too late.
Want to support us and appreciate our craft? Click like, comment, and hit the subscribe button now.